Here's a question I want you to sit with. What's the real reason you have not launched? The post, the pitch, the promotion ask you've been putting off. If you've been calling it perfectionism, I want to offer you a reframe, because according to my guest today, perfectionism is just fear with better PR. I'm Sabrina Brahm, psychotherapist and executive leadership coach with over 30 years' experience and host of Women's Leadership Success podcast. In part 2 of my conversation with branding expert Howie Chan, we get into the psychology that keeps high achievers stuck and the neuroscience that sets them free. We cover the spotlight effect, Cornell University research showing people notice your mistakes less than half as much as you think. We cover identity-based action, why acting as the leader you're becoming is exactly how you become them. We cover the fresh start effect, why a setback is scientifically your best moment to build something new. And we cover the influence flywheel, the system that turns scattered effort into compounding career momentum. You're not going to wait until you're ready, because here's what we both know. Ready is not a feeling, it's a decision. Let me show you how.
Welcome to Women's Leadership Podcast, showing you how to influence people, improve your performance, and advance your career. Brought to you by women's leadership and career expert Sabrina Brahm and womensleadershipsuccess.com. Here's your chance to meet women trendsetters leading the way to success, accomplishment, and balance in business and life. No matter if you're a manager, CEO, or entrepreneur, join Sabrina for coaching and no-nonsense advice to improve your career and bottom line.
Welcome, Howie.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thanks for having me.
So nice to have you here. And you were in part 1, but for those people that didn't listen to it, can you just give a little bit about your background and what's made you an expert on promoting yourself and branding?
Yeah, so my deep interest is about influencing human behavior. Why do people do what they do? How do you influence it, whether it's for yourself or for others? And those of you who didn't listen to the first part, I really got my start after being laid off from my dream job. Actually, I was a managing director of brand strategy, and after I got laid off, my interest was not just to help companies with their brand, but also to help people figure out what do they want to do next, what's their professional brand going to be, and how do they better influence human behavior to reach a level of success that they never thought was possible.
Great. So how do high-performing women, why is it high-performing women still feel stuck when they're succeeding? What makes that happen?
That's a deep question, Sabrina. So I feel like whenever you feel stuck, I actually, on my podcast, Influence Anyone, just talked to Arial. He just published a book called Beyond Belief. Mm-hmm. And
great book, by the way.
Fantastic book. And in that episode, we actually broke down one of the reasons why I was stuck. So if you feel stuck and you are accomplishing everything that you want, there's probably a belief in place that you have that's holding you back somehow. Mm-hmm. So whether something is incongruent with what you want your life to be, or you have been putting off something that you know you should do, but you're not doing, something is in there, a belief that you have is keeping you stuck. And I think it's important to identify, and Neer talks about this, which is you got to call it out. You got to name it. You got to identify it. Mm-hmm. And then you start running experiments. You start figuring out what's a better way to take that belief away and to find evidence for this new belief that you want to put in place.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's so important that we know what we're thinking and we learn to control and have the kind of thoughts we want to have. And sometimes we need to jumpstart. So how do we get where we act before we're ready?
Yeah, so that's a great one. So a lot of times, I mean, we all do this, which is a lot of times we wait till we feel like doing something and then we go do it, right? But the problem with that is feelings come from a part of the brain that's not in the conscious, planning part of the brain, which is the part of the brain that's the latest being formed, right? That's a layer, the cortex or the neocortex, which is planning and all that. But emotions come from a different part of the brain. So it is actually very, very difficult to change your emotions. However, it is much easier to change your actions and then let the actions then create the feelings that you want. So case in point, right? So, I trained for a bike ride, a 100-mile bike ride every year. Since I was 40. So a lot of the mornings I don't feel like doing it. I just don't feel like it. I don't feel good. I don't feel like, riding and training, but I do it anyway. There are certain things that you can do to get yourself to do these things. And after you do it, you feel great every single time. If you don't feel like it and you still do it, you'll feel phenomenal. So don't wait for the feeling. Take the action that you need to do, and then the feeling will come.
That's great. Act as if it's already happening. That's
right. Take the actions. Yeah.
So, why does that shape us more than motivation or confidence? Why does that help our identity?
Yeah, Sabrina, I mean, when we take the actions, each action is actually a vote for the person that you say you are. So, if you think about identity, let's say I think of myself as a cyclist, or as a long distance cyclist. The action, the thing that you do actually is a vote for that. It's kind of like if you're an author and you say, I write, I'm an author. But if you don't write, then you won't feel like it. And this is cognitive dissonance, right? This is real pain in which we are all creatures who want to align with who we say we are. And this can be good or bad. So if you find yourself, identify yourselves as part of a tribe, and a tribe is doing some things that are bad, you still feel like you have to do the things that's bad in order to align your identity with the tribe.
Right.
So, we all have to understand, again, what is our identity? Why are we there? Why do we feel belong with the tribe? And know that when you take the actions, you become more and more as part of that, and more as part of that identity.
Yeah. And I think it's also can be very valuable to get a really good coach like me to help you. And last week when I was listening to your workshop, you have a whole workshop where you have a small group of people come together and they help each other build their confidence and build their identity. And that's a really good way to do it too. And at the end of the show, we'll give more information about that. I don't usually plug somebody's workshop in my program, but I was so impressed by what you were doing. I think it's a great way to get a group together to help you with that.
Yeah, so I sort of always do this with my workshops and cohort programs, Sabrina, and I think we all sort of feel this. There are two components to it. I think there is the skill acquisition part, right? But there's also the psychological part. And I think a lot of people miss the psychological part. And what I mean by that is this, if you think about information that exists, we all have the information. I mean, really, if you think about it, whether it's through AI or you just go search online, there's an abundance of information. But then why do we not do the things that we know that we should do? Right. So the psychological part is super interesting and important, because not only does having a group of people doing it together help you because you're learning from each other, it's also accountability. When you say, hey, I'm going to do it with a group of people, and you say, I'm going to do this, and have a group of people hold you accountable, you're more likely to get it done than just saying it yourself and wanting to be accountable to yourself. So that's a psychological aspect of things I think is super important.
Can you give us a story about that? Do you have an example of somebody that wasn't doing it and then they shifted and what happened?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so when I was sort of coaching folks, I have people that sort of coach with me one-on-one and then join my programs. And let's call her Jill. So Jill was doing a one-on-one thing with me, and we sort of figured out her her sort of positioning, right? Who she wants to be, what she wants to be known for, how she's different. Mm-hmm. But she never really executed on it, even though she did the coaching and we could have, landed on a place, but nothing really happened. And then months later, I was running a workshop in a cohort group. She joined it again. And because it was with other people, she was testing out her hypothesis, her positioning. People were giving feedback. She was giving others feedback. And then ultimately at the end of the program, I encouraged and challenged people to put things out there, to launch things. And she did. And it's not because that the information was so different. I think it is because there is a group of people, that's giving her feedback. She's involved and she's engaged. And she also saw that other people were executing on what they found. And it helped her take accountability and actually move forward. So it's a tremendous component, I think, to help people with transformation is to do it together as a group.
I think that's so valuable. Can you talk about perfectionism and how that blocks branding and growth?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when I think about perfectionism, I feel like it's fear, really. It's fear. What I mean by that is whenever I see myself in those moments where, oh, Howie, maybe you just need to give it another round or give it one more go or don't launch it yet. You gotta keep improving on something. And when I ask myself, like, what is really underneath all of that? It is fear. It's fear that I'll fail, fear that I'll embarrass myself, fear that other people will judge me. And I think because of that fear, people tend to procrastinate and hold things back and say, oh yeah, I'm a perfectionist. That's why. Nah, it's not really that if you really think about it. It's fear. And the thing is, if you think about the spotlight effect, which is something we all face, it's an effect where we think other people judge us more than they actually do. So in an experiment, this is a sort of a landmark experiment where students were asked to dress, wear like a Barry Manilow shirt or some shirt that might not be as cool. They basically thought 50% of the people would actually notice them. But when they measured it, it was actually 23% actually, noticed it at all. So people over assume that you're being judged. I mean, think about this. If you look at a group photo, who is the first person you look at? Yourself. It is the first person, because we are all going around in our own realities, caring about us more than anybody else. And that's the truth. So I would say take that to heart and fail, launch, right? So if you want to build your brand, if you want to be out there, if you want to help yourself be seen, you have to go do the work and don't keep waiting. Ship, learn. And guess what? If you fail, it's actually a story you can tell. Right. And you keep going of how you failed. And we talked about this, which is in a story, you have to have failure. You have to have downward points and use it as a way to tell a story if you keep going and keep learning from it.
That's so great. And the thing that people aren't really noticing, I remember seeing something on LinkedIn, or not LinkedIn, YouTube, where a guy had a half a mustache and half a beard, but the other side was shaven, and almost nobody noticed. I mean, some people would see him as clean shaven, the others would see the beard. Yeah. So they weren't really paying that much attention. So what do people misunderstand about influence?
Yeah. I would say the number one thing is I talk to more and more people about this, Sabrina, is people often think about influence as manipulation. They think it's like an underhanded way to get people to do things that people don't want to do. So sometimes when people hear that, they correlate it with that. And I think it's probably marketers and folks that are using this tool as a way to underhandedly do these manipulation tactics. Like any tool, I'd say influence is a skill. You can use it for good and evil. And I'm always a proponent of good, because why? One of the reasons of brand is about a long-term relationship with the people you're trying to influence, right? So when I had Dr. Robert Cialdini, the Godfather of influence, on my show, he even mentioned that when somebody experiences a person that is manipulating them using influence, they will always remember the person, even if they don't remember or know the tool or tactic that you used. So for me, it's really about, if you want a long-term a brand and a relationship with someone, it's about using the truth to then influence someone so that they can make the best decisions for them, not for you, for them. Right. So I think people often mistake influence for manipulation, and it's terrible. Totally. And there are people that use it for bad, but if you are of good intention, and you care a lot about the people you're trying to serve, use it to help them.
I love that. For my last question, I want to ask you, okay, you're a person who got laid off from your job, or you've had a big failure, and you want to be the phoenix coming out of the fire. You want to reinvent yourself. You want to really put yourself out in an authentic way that you can be helpful to other people. How do you start? What's a good way to begin to do that?
Yeah, I feel like if I was laid off from a job again, I would probably give this advice, which is, when that happens, like I said, when you lose your identity, it is a physical pain. Like you do feel pain. To take some time off, like really just step away and use it as a moment to reassess and come up fresh. So if you guys know Katie Milkman, she's a researcher, and she has this book about how to change. And one of her effects that she studied and talked about is called the fresh start effect. So it's this idea that when you leverage an end of something and a beginning of something, you're actually more likely to go through with something new and to make a change. This is the reason why people make New Year's resolutions, or even going through a physical, let's say a door frame, can change how you view things, or help you actually start new things. So view that layoff, that death of an identity, as a fresh start. Right? Recalculate, recalibrate, think about what you really value, and what is your value, and start from there. I tell people this all the time, Sabrina, your fresh start is not starting from scratch. It's starting from experience. You have experience, and whatever that is going to help you to go to something new, and to move towards something that you desire.
Yeah, you really have an opportunity to become visible in a new way, in a more authentic way, in a way that you have more energy, more excitement about. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Use it as an opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, what's the Chinese opportunity, and what's the opposite that the Chinese say is, there's a character? Do you know that one?
No.
Gosh, wish I could remember it. But basically, that everything can either be a failure or it can be an opportunity. And that, why not make it an opportunity? A new beginning, a new, if you were perceived as somebody who never spoke up, nobody knows you in this new situation. You can start speaking up more. You can laugh more. You can bring forth those qualities that you want to bring to the situation.
Yeah. Well, you're right? I mean, when you're given the opportunity to step into a new environment, your old colleagues aren't there anymore. Your old story is buried over there. Yeah, it's such a liberating feeling to then, all right, let's try something new. Let's try on some new clothes. Let's try on a new voice, a new way of being that's maybe more authentic to you. So I think we always have the ability to reassess and move towards something that gives us pleasure and joy and energy, right?
Yeah. And life is full of opportunities brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. There's always some great light at the end of the tunnel that you can move towards. Howie, this has been so much fun talking to you, and I would really like people to get more experience of you. You said you have a podcast. Can you tell us the name of it?
Yeah, the podcast is called Influence Anyone. So you can find it on any of the podcast players. I just launched a YouTube channel, so go check that out. Super excited about that. And yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn as well. And if you really want to get connected and stay connected, subscribe to my newsletter. I write an issue every single week, giving you an influence playbook. Go to howiechan.com. You can subscribe there.
Mm-hmm. And you also offer workshops. One that I'm looking forward to taking. It looks really exciting. Can you tell people about that a little bit?
Yeah, so this is a workshop that I've been working on. It's really a cohort program. It's called Influence System Mastery. So the idea is people think about influence, think about brand as almost like one-time tactics. You know, I'm going to go launch this one thing. I'm going to do this post, or I'm going to influence someone on a client call, for example. But I think what most people miss is that in order for you to have influence 24/7 that compounds over time, which is all what we want, more impact, more people helped, more revenue, you need to build a flywheel. So in that cohort, I teach how do you build an influence flywheel based off of different cohorts and programs that I've done in the past, and now really pulling them, all of them together into a system that can help you be successful and help you build the compounding influence over time.
You know, I love the concept of a flywheel. Can you explain a little more about what that is? How it's different than just a regular course or something somebody might take?
Yeah, so the flywheel concept is not by me. So Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great, originally talked about this called the flywheel effect. And what he saw was that companies that were super successful had very specific flywheels where one thing led to another, and it went back to itself and became more and more powerful. So think about a flywheel. I like to give this example again. You know, this one was by Nathan Barry, the founder of Kit. He shared this idea of the flywheel using a hand pump. He shows if you had a normal pump for water, let's say you're pumping water out of a well, and every time you push in that pump, water comes out. That's like a hand pump model, right? So, for example, if you go to an event and you want to network, you get 5 leads, one pump. Or you do a post and you put out a testimonial, and maybe you get 2 leads. All right, one pump. Mm-hmm. How do you move from that model to a model where it's a crank where you spin, right? And maybe the initial stages of the spin is hard because you're like, it's really hard to push. But then over time, as you start to push that more and more revolutions, it becomes easier and easier. And water comes out, flowing out instead of a gush every time you push in that pump. So what you're trying to do and what I'm teaching people to do is to build a system whereby you go from being seen to being remembered, to being trusted, to being bought, to being referred, and back to being seen. So that's an essential structure for an influence flywheel. And once you start to connect all of those dots, it becomes something that you can continue to put effort in, but it gets you more and more results over time.
Yeah. And have you experienced that people are making more money by doing that?
Well, the most important part of it is this. Once you know the structure, you can then see the gaps that you're missing. And once you start connecting them and putting something very simple, it doesn't have to be complicated. It actually should be simple. It just naturally will get you more eyeballs, will get you more trust, and get you more clients. as a result. And you think about leaders within the organization, back to this idea of how do you want to create your brand within an organization? Mm-hmm. Using that structure can immediately help you as well. Where do you want to be seen? Who needs to see you? How do you get them to remember you? How do you get them to trust you more? How do you get them to exchange value with you? How do you get them to talk about you when you're not in the room? So that structure can help you as well to build your brand, get you the promotions, get you more opportunities.
Beautiful. What a great and inspiring way to end this show. Thank you so much for being on. I really, really appreciated you and what you had to share today.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you for the opportunity. This has been a long time coming, so I'm so happy that we finally got to connect.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I know your time is valuable, and I never take that for granted. My work is dedicated to senior managers, directors, VPs, and leaders who are ready to advance to the next level, build unshakable executive presence, and create the influence and networks that get you seen, heard, and promoted. If today's episode gave you even one idea you can use right now, that's exactly why I created this podcast. And if you want to go deeper, head over to sabrinabrahm.com and subscribe to my free 3-minute newsletter, The Missing Leadership Link, packed with twice-monthly tactics to increase your visibility and command respect in every room you walk into. And if this podcast has been valuable to you, please subscribe and leave us a review. Your review helps other women leaders just like you find this show and get the strategies they need to rise. And can I ask a small favor? Please share this podcast with at least one other leader in your life, a colleague, a friend, someone you know who is ready to step up. You could change the trajectory of their career with one simple share. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search Sabrina Brahm Executive Leadership Coach. DM me anytime. I personally read every message, and I would love to hear what resonated with you today or answer any questions you might have. If you're ready to advance faster, coaching with me will absolutely help. Reach out at sabrinabrahm.com about one-on-one coaching or join my exclusive Impact Leadership Mastermind. Until next time, keep elevating your presence and advancing your career. You've got this. I believe in you.
Thank you for joining your host, Sabrina Brahm, on another Women's Leadership Podcast. If you have questions or comments, you can email her at sabrina@sabrinabrahm.com. Since 1989, Sabrina and her team have helped hundreds of women managers, business leaders, and entrepreneurs with valuable trainings, articles, books, and executive coaching. For additional tips, interviews, and free access to Great Leaders Today mini course, visit www.womensleadershipsuccess.com.